Hey there, pastors and theologians. This is Pastor Anthony coming to you with Pastor Talks, and thank you so much for joining us today. I just want to let you know before we get started today, this is episode 3.2, so this is the second part of episode 3. So if you are just tuning in and this is the first one that you're watching, make sure that you stop this, go back and watch episode 3.1 before you watch this, because you're jumping into the middle of a conversation. This is actually the second half of that conversation. And so let me just encourage you to do that. Before you watch this episode, go again and watch 3.1 so you get the whole discussion on the assimilation process. We hope that you're enjoying these things, and like always, if you have any questions, further thoughts on this, make sure that you comment below and rate and subscribe so you can keep watching the channel and get notified when things come up. Guys, enjoy the podcast.
Well, let me ask you guys a question, because y'all are both in established churches, and most of my experience as a senior pastor was in more of a church plant setting, right? And so this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but I think it helps our conversation. In my setting, as a church plant in a portable setting, we met in a middle school. It's easy for me to cast vision and to show a need for volunteers, right? And so when we restructure our children's ministry, I literally grabbed 4 guys that weren't really plugged into our church beyond just their wives were engaged, but they weren't. I grabbed 4 guys and said, I need you guys to commit to 6 weeks to help me set up this new children's area. I'm buying the Starbucks. You guys show up at 8 o'clock. Let's get this thing set up together. So it's easy for me to show a need and to grab guys and get them engaged doing something. In more of an established church where there's already kind of a function and there's less of a visible need, my question is, how do we cast the vision for the need for their interaction, engagement, volunteer, their ministry, their engagement in the life of the church that way? How do we cast that vision of a need without necessarily coming across as needy? Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you guys do for that?
Yeah. I think the big thing, like what Anthony referred to, is making sure your mission statement of the church is well known. Mm-hmm. So we are Somerville First Baptist, where love surrounds. And we say there's 2 ways that we do that. We save the lost and we grow the saved. So I'm asking, okay, you need to be involved in both of those processes. So I'm not saying, we need more evangelists. I'm saying we save the lost. So how are you doing that? That is part of being a member here. So where are you? What part of our outreach committee are you doing? Are you going out with us on Tuesdays to knock on doors? Are you going to the high school to share the gift bags and things that we're doing? Are you putting something together for that? And then we say, okay, well then grow the saved. And my big question is, okay, have you been discipled? If no, we've got to get someone to do that. And are you discipling someone? That is what it means to be a member here, to be growing with someone. So there is a need for us to disciple people. We've got children and teenagers who need someone to walk alongside them. But instead of saying, hey, I need a volunteer to disciple, I'm saying, okay, this is what membership here means. We grow the saved. So are you doing that? Because that's what it means to be a good member here.
Okay. That's Anthony, how do you manage that? Shooting that gap between showing the need without being needy?
Yeah. So what we do is I really try and ground it into Scripture. And what I mean by that is that I tell people in that new member class, part of unity and connecting with the church is not just going, oh, the church needs something, but it's asking, what has God designed me for? Mm-hmm. I mean, you guys know this. When you read the book of 1 Corinthians, Paul talks about the body of Christ, and each member is a different member of that body. And so I'm more or less positioning off of the point of God has created you for something bigger than what, the world has to offer you. He's created you with special gifts and abilities that other people don't have. And I even joke with them about it. I tell them, if somebody put me in the 3 and 4s room of our nursery, it would be a dangerous day. I mean, like, I would have kids swinging from the ceiling, and we'd be doing dance parties, and it'd be crazy, because dance party in a Baptist church is probably not a good idea, right? So I really purpose it off of like, what has God designed you for? And are you fulfilling what God has designed you for in your church, in order to serve his kingdom? And so that's what I do. I believe that God has a great plan for all of us. Part of that is being aligned with the church. Another part of that is being used in a church.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we do.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And if you have a different way of doing things, or you have a plan to assimilate, let us know in the comments below so that we can interact with you, because we've got really 3 different settings going on between church plant, more of a rural church and more of a suburban church in Texas. You may be in a different context and want to let us know what you're doing. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Okay, guys, let me ask you this question as we keep moving further in this. Where does the assimilation process end? Like, if I'm looking at this process and going, okay, I'm going to start at a visitor coming to my church who may be a new believer, and then where does that process end? Does it end at church membership? Does it end where does that end for you?
I don't think church membership is just the goal. It's not just to get a new member. I think the goal is to have an active, healthy member involved. So I would say assimilation ends when they can tell you, I'm serving here and I'm seeing God do this. This is where the fruit is growing. We talk about having fruit and having success in ministry. I want to see a person discipling someone else, teaching a class, and excited about it, and not just saying, well, I had to meet a need, but actually saying, God is using me in the church here, and this is our mission moving forward.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm glad to hear you say that. Sorry, David. I'm glad to hear you say that, because when you look on churches of the past, it seems like a lot of times a membership was just walking an aisle, coming to the front, pastor going, okay, Bob and Jane here, they want to be members of the church. Everybody vote on them to be members. And then that was it. And so it seemed like the end goal of assimilation was just somebody moving a letter or something like that. And Sean, to hear you sit there and say that it's not really about the letter being moved or the membership being formally made, it's about fully integrating somebody into the body. That's really refreshing to me. David, what were you going to say, man?
Well, I was going to say there was a move some years ago to change how we talk about membership, right? And so some churches went with, we don't have members, we have partners. Some churches went with, we don't have members, we have owners, which I always,
careful.
I always push back against that. I'm like, time out. Jesus said it was his church. He died for it. He bled for it. He married it, called it his bride. You don't get to say you're the owner. That's no. But I do think that there was a healthy emphasis they were trying to create with that, and that was this sense of personal identification with the church, right? So I'm not just a member, I'm a partner. I'm an active part of the church. And so even to say I'm an owner is to try and communicate somehow that this is my church, as in I'm identifying with that church. I think it gets dangerous if you're saying it belongs to me, but to say that this is the church that I'm identifying with, I'm okay with. And so I think there was some good in trying to rename and reframe the way we talk about it. And so when I would say, when does assimilation stop or when does assimilation complete? It's when they have such a level of investment in the church that when they talk about church, it's their church. It's the church that they're engaged with. It's the church that they're investing in, not just financially, but they're investing their time and their energies. They're investing in mentoring someone else and discipling someone else and being discipled. And so when it's no longer the church that I attend or the church that we go to, but it's my church, like at that point, we're good. You're assimilated. Now we still have a responsibility for continued discipleship and continued involvement and continued responsibility and oversight and shepherding. But assimilation, man, they're there. They're part of it. They're rocking and rolling. And so, yeah, it goes beyond membership. But there does have to be a point where you say, okay, now we can calm down and we've got you on this track. Let's keep you moving on this track and let's go get more folks on the track.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. What happens if somebody walks through this assimilation process They go through, they get all the cards, they get all the connections, they go to the new member class, they do all that type of stuff. And then they get on the backside of it. They're technically church members, but they're not assimilated. They're not going to Sunday school. They're rarely attending church. They're not serving in any place, and they're not giving toward the mission. So what happens then?
Well, I'd like to say that there's a discipline aspect involved in that, but to be honest, with our church at the moment, that I would say that's normal, and we're working past that. If I were to do church discipline with everyone who, in the way that you described, we'd be down to a handful of people. So I think for us, there's got to be some growing aspect in understanding what membership means still. So we've got to get to a point where you say, okay, you do understand that doing that means you're not, you have a name on a roll, and you say, well, I'm a member of Somerville First Baptist, but you're not really a member in the sense that you're involved in anything we're doing other than Sunday morning service.
Yeah. It's important that you say that, Sean, because for those who don't know, Sean hasn't been at his pastorate for decades or anything like that. Sean, how long have you been there? Remind me.
About a year and 3 months.
A year and 3 months. So not very long. So if you're looking at this process and going, how do I begin an assimilation process? Understand that you're going to start this process, and it may take 2 or 3 years at the minimum for you to be able to.
We're still getting to the ideal. I have the ideal in mind. We have the principles in place, but we're still trying to understand that just because you've been a member here for 30 years and we haven't seen you in 20 does not make you a member here.
Yeah.
Well, and I've been a part of a church, not as a pastor, but as a member. I've been a part of a church that underwent efforts to make church membership meaningful again. And I think that's an important component to this, right? And so every person in this church had to go through the new members class. Every single person in the church had to go to new members class. Now, half of them were there when the church was founded 50 years ago, but they still had to undergo the new members class. That ruffled some feathers. Let's be honest, that ruffled some feathers, but it created a sharp line between those who were active and engaged and those who were unwilling to. And then you have to decide, and I think it's important that we're all three of us are Southern Baptist, and so the autonomy of the local church kicks in as to how the church is going to handle that. Whether the church is going to have inactive membership, whether the church is going to clean the rolls, which some churches do, and that gets rough, right? So it gets rough when you start talking about clearing the rolls. We're going to remove all our inactive members. You're going to face a lot of backlash there. And frankly, that may be a decision that you choose not to make. You may choose to take a different course of action. One of the things that a church that I was a member at did, we had the new members class, but if you were inactive, quote unquote inactive, as we were clearing the rolls, you were who got visited on Wednesday nights. You got the pastor, and you got the those who went out and did outreach. We had your address. We had your name. We could go. We could have conversation with you. We'd pop in, share the gospel. In a lot of cases, we saw fruit of evangelism. You had people who were technically on church membership rolls who weren't Christians. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, you had a terrifyingly number of people who were gone or deceased, and the church just didn't know. You had and see. This is a great opportunity in a lot of ways to have a built-in list of folks for your church to go after. I mean, we talk about Jesus's parable of leaving the 99 and going after the one. In a lot of cases, this is our outreach program, right? We have a list. You're technically a member of our church. We're not sure how that happened. It's not my job to figure out how it happened. It's my job to see that either I'm taking care of you, because as a pastor and elder of the church, I'm the one who's going to give, right? We're going to give an account for those that, under our charge. I'm going to give an account for the state of your soul one day.
Yeah.
So I need to at least lay eyes on you, know you. And then, we've got to decide, are you a part of this church? Are you a part of this body, or are you something else?
Yeah. And so I think one of the big words we got to use here is that we have to love our members, even the ones that you might say, okay, they're not quite active yet, especially when you're a new pastor. So I got here and thought, I'm going to purge the roles.
No.
We're going to do it. I would like to know who my flock is, because I've got about 700 people and I'm only seeing about 60 to 80 of them. So that's a big difference. But what ended up happening is we found, okay, there's at least 25 people here that have been dead for a while. And so they're still active members. We've got to take care of that. But then there's also those that we go, okay, these are our shut-ins. And so, no, they're not active in the same sense, but we need to go and do something for them. We need to have a ministry to them of some kind. What can we do for them? And then we had those who were family members who are inactive. And so instead of purging them, the question is, okay, when's the last time we visited them? If this is a son of one of our deacons and he's not coming to church, when was the last time someone went and said, hey, how are you doing? So love is the big thing here. Some people have just been forgotten and are in the back, and they are the one that you got to go and get and say, we love you. We'd like to see you back here.
That's good.
Some people have been hurt by relationships in the church, and they're still holding on to that, and they're waiting for a second relationship from that church that's a healthy, kind relationship to come kind of be that soothing balm. I mean, I've seen that more times than I can count.
So I guess in conclusion to all of this, what we're talking about is that if you see a member that's becoming inactive in the membership, then go and visit them, right? For the purposes of restoration. I mean, I think that's what you're seeing. I think practically as a pastor, one of the things that you have to do is you have to have some kind of mechanism in there, whether that's moving them to an inactive status or just being consciously aware, which is going to be very difficult the larger your church gets. But there needs to be some kind of mechanism in there to let people know that this person is not active and we need to take action, whether that's visiting them or sending them a letter or whatever that looks like for you. Let me ask you this. As we kind of close this thing out, I want to give you one final question. All right. So there is a movement among Baptist churches, non-denominational churches, all churches to go away from a membership or letter system altogether, as if there is no kind of assimilation process. There has been guys that have said something like, well, membership is determined by where they place their feet, or they will become members by either walking in or walking out. So what is your response to that? Is this even something that we should be looking at? Or is this something that we just need to judge by involvement? Because essentially that's what we're talking about in this assimilation process, right? We're talking about how do we get people involved?
Look, David mentioned it, and this is important. You have to give an answer to the souls under your care. So you can change the idea of membership to something else. You can pick a new word for it, but in the end, you are the under shepherd. Jesus is our over shepherd, but you have a responsibility there. So you got to know who these people are. So if you want to change membership to mean whoever attends our live service online, you better be able to give an answer for their doctrinal integrity or what do they believe, and check on them. So, I've got people who are saying, well, our memberships increased by 50 by going to Facebook Live, and we have a consistent 50 people watching it. I said, well, who are those people? I don't know, but they're there. That's not okay. That is something we've got to protect, is the idea that I have to give an account for who these people are.
But it's not only giving an account too. I mean, as a pastor, you're a shepherd of people. You're trying to help them reach that further understanding of who God is. You're trying to help them and encourage them in the faith to become more faithful to Christ and to take that next step of faith. And I don't think you can do that if you're just sitting there saying, oh, well, if they show up, then they're doing the right thing. It's a very low bar that we're setting, and we're not really doing our people justice whenever we do that. We're not discipling them. All we're doing is we're asking them to show up and be a part. So,
well, and it comes back to, what do we see our roles as, and what do we see the role of the church in the life of the believer?
Yeah.
Is this where you come to get your spiritual feeding for the week? Or is this where you participate and live your faith? So if the author of Hebrews is right, and he's calling in his final charge to obey your leaders and submit to them with the reasoning that they keep watch over your souls as those who will give an account, then I can't be passive in merely doing what I can to whoever shows up. I for my sake, need to be able to know the state of their souls and know the state of our sheep. And if shepherding is the image of the pastor consistently given in the New Testament, then the whole idea of shepherding is that you have a flock,
your sheep,
that's distinct from the other flock.
Yeah.
So it's not open pastures where we just let all our sheep mix. That's not what's happening. That's not the image of the pastor in the New Testament. So if we're going to be biblical, if we're going to be responsible as pastors, then we have to know the state of our flock.
Absolutely.
And my wife likes to put it this way, like there's so many options for you to be social. You're online in different places, but the church is quickly becoming one place where you can actually know and dwell and be with people in a meaningful way that's meant to impact your life. So, I mean, you can be online and you can be in a social club of some kind, but the church is one of the few places left in our society where you can go and say, I am struggling. And these people say, let me walk with you. And we've experienced that here because we moved where there's no family. There's nobody remotely close to where we're at in our immediate family or extended family. And so the church has become our extended family. Who's going to watch the kids when we want to go on a date? There's no grandma. There's no grandpa. It's got to be a church member. So we had to develop friendships and relationships and learn to trust people with our children. That's difficult. But the church, when someone comes along and says, I want to love my pastor and I want to walk with them, that's beautiful. And it's really, people here have become very close to us within a matter of a year.
Amen. Amen. That's good. Well, guys, I appreciate your involvement today on this video podcast thing, whatever this is we're doing here. It's been a good discussion on church assimilation processes and things like that. Guys, if you are joining us online and you're watching this video, we just appreciate you guys following us. Make sure to rate and subscribe us. Give us a thumbs up down there in the bottom, and then also put in the comments, again, some other thoughts or ideas that you may have. We have an exciting topic next week that we're going to be working through. We're going to be working through what is preaching in the local body of believers. So make sure you join us for next week's video, and we will catch you next time. We're praying for you guys. We love you guys. Y'all have a great week.